Today, I'm going to talk about something that I have been working on for a long time. Over the last couple months, I have been getting into Magic the Gathering, and I think it's really cool how there are different kinds of cards that have different things. And as a creative person, oftentimes I will take ideas and concepts such as this and I will apply it to other fields like music. And it got me thinking, what are the different qualities of music? And just stay with me now. If I was a painter and I was painting with different colors and that was how I was making my song, what would the different qualities of music be? What would their colors be? What would they represent? How would I know if I was using too much of something? How would I know if I was not using enough of something? Which colors represent the famous players that I really like Jimmy Page, David Gilmour, Tom Morello, Nick Reinhardt, and so on and so forth. And I'm going to get into that. So, this is going to be pretty autistic. So, if that's not your jam, I don't know what to tell you. You're already here. You're fucked. There's five. There's five different points with a lot of things. It can be divided into five, like the senses, right? Like the elements, right? Oh, there's only four elements. Ether, bitch. Ether is an element, and we're gonna talk about that. Kind of the most ethereal element of music, actually. I'm gonna describe it with the color orange, like the sunglasses I'm wearing, and this is a very powerful quality. This is a very powerful color that you can paint with when you are making music. Orange, I am associating with the essence of sonic artistry. Sonic artistry, the way it sounds, right? And everything that I'm doing and I'm saying I'm doing within the context of being a guitar player. This is specifically to guitar playing. I'm going to try to keep it within that lane because that's what I am. So, orange is going to be sonic artistry. This is the first color. It's a very powerful color within the confines of creativity. Orange is understood as an extremely powerful color. And yes, there are alchemical reasons why, but this is not meant to be an alchemical discussion at all. I like the color orange and I think it signifies what sonic artistry is. So this can be seen as what you're doing. You're not really worried about the technicality, right? You're not worried about the chops that it takes to do these things. And you're also not really worried about the feel of these things or the music theory of these things. A really good example would be Tom Morello, Rage Against the Machine. Ow, 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 right? Like there's no classically trained stuff that goes into that. It's like I'm gonna use a pedal and I'm gonna do a cool thing to make a cool sound. And it doesn't even really sound like a guitar. He's trying to make his guitar sound like other things. And ironically, a lot of the coolest sounds that guitar players have made have been them trying to make the guitar sound like other things. Jimmy Page, he did this with his violin bow. At the end of the song, damn it, I'm one over the hills and far away. Don't don't come after me, Led Zeppelin fans. I'm sorry. Over the hills and far away at the very end, he's using his 12 string, but he's got the pickups on the other side of the guitar. So when he plays the guitar, it doesn't even sound like a guitar. It sounds like a harpsichord. The Edge, Adrian Belew, making his guitar sound like an elephant. I think Eddie Van Halen did something very similar. So a lot of the greats, a lot of really cool cats have kind of mastered painting in the color orange. And the formal description that I would use, using pedals, cool amps, or techniques, harmonics, pinch harmonics, pickups, etc., Orange is an extremely powerful color to paint with if done correctly. It transcends both genre and culture, time and space. Within this, one can also lose themselves if the pursuit of painting in orange becomes a cycle of self indulgence. And Tom Morello is someone that I keep mentioning because they are a great archetype to think of for this. When Tom Morello first started in Rage Against the Machine, I'm thinking back to the first Rage Against the Machine album. He did really cool things with his pedals, but he also still wrote good guitar solos. The one that sticks out to me the most, I'll never forget. My dad sitting me down and playing Fistful of Steel for me. And when I heard the guitar solo, the first one, the noise solo, I was like, dude, this is the coolest thing ever. It sounds like I'm in a war zone. And this is like, like, yo, like we have intel coming in or whatever. You know what I mean? But then after that, I'll never forget, after the first solo, the very end of the song, Tom Morello plays a second solo, a shred solo. And my dad, he looks at me and he's like, "See, he can do it all. He can do both." And that stuck out to me so much as a guitarist. It's like he's not just making cool sounds and doing new things and innovating. He is also still shredding your face off. You know that that I love that solo so much. That is my favorite Tom Morello guitar solo of all time. And you can see throughout Tom Morello's career, he went from that, probably the best form he was in just on paper on the first album, and he kind of just stopped caring about the shredding. Fast forward to like the Battle of Los Angeles, which is probably my favorite Rage Against the Machine album because it was produced better than the first album, right? It sounds really good, the tones are really good, and they got a little more creative and they tried some things that they maybe necessarily haven't done on other songs. Like the first song, they had like a bridge, which was cool. They're kind of more like a riff rock band, so that was really cool. But there weren't really shred solos on that album. It was just noise. It was just the color orange. Fast forward to Audio Slave, and we have, in what my opinion is the weakest era of Tom Morello's guitar solos. And don't get it twisted, he still wrote some really good, really memorable guitar solos. Some people might argue that his solo on Like a Stone is his best guitar solo. It's definitely top 10, maybe top 5. But two of my least favorite solos that he ever did was the solo he did on I Am the Highway. And I don't even think it actually counts as a guitar solo. And I felt this so strongly that I actually wrote a solo for that in my Solo Over series that I did a few years ago. Then his solo for the song Doesn't Remind Me of Anything. Doesn't Remind Me of Anything is a brilliant song. And, you can just tell that Chris Cornell is pouring his heart and soul out into it. And then it kind of just feels like Tom Morello drank a couple beers, went into the studio, pulled his dick out and played his guitar with it. I'm, metaphorically speaking, because he's wanking. That's what that solo is. you're not even doing anything. You're like, look, I'm gonna put on the wah and I'm gonna go in the pentatonic box. Ooh, like we don't have enough of that in the world. And I'm bummed out that some of Chris Cornell's best years were wasted on some of Tom Morello's worst solos. And I am a Tom Morello fan. This isn't like a character assassination of Tom Morello. It's just I'm being objective. Objectivity in music. And if he doesn't like this, well, boo-hoo, cry me a fucking river. He's a, millionaire musician and I'm me. So, whatever. But the thing to bring it back after that tangent is kind of over. Orange could be something as simple as your tone, or something more complex like a pedal combo, like Nick Reinhardt, of Terramellos, other bands, as well. Bygones. Uh, I'm sorry, Nick, that I'm not remember Death Grips. He's in Death Grips now. Nick, I saw you a couple years ago in Death Grips, and I wore this ski mask, and no one wanted to smoke in the pit. I was a wild man that night. Someone there actually had to give me water because I was so dehydrated. Nick, you rocked the house with that show. I love you, man. Nick would do this thing where he would take a delay pedal that would sample like a really quick amount of time. And so he would go like whoop, like that. And then he would get like this whoop, 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 whoop sound. And then he had a pitch shifter after the looper. So it would go like whoop, 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 and it sounded awesome. I've heard other people kind of sample really quickly, like Periphery, but with them it's more like they'll do like like a really quickly like chunk thing, and then they'll sample that, so it's like it's like much more staccato. And that's really cool too. Other bands have done that, and I know Nick probably isn't the only one that's done that, but I've shamelessly added that to my toolkit. I don't care. When I do it, I'm not trying to rip off Nick. I feel like I'm keeping the flame alive. I'm keeping that orange flame alive. But orange is something that you hear first, and I know I said I was going to talk about guitar, but I will strive from guitar just to mention Kanye, because I think Kanye is someone who has mastered the use of the color orange when making music. All right, now I want to talk about something a little bit different. I'm going to talk about chops, pure physical ability. And for this, I am using the color black. Defined by its ambition in Magic the Gathering, it's no different in music. Synonymous with metal, the color black has become a dominant force in modern music culture, particularly with guitar, and particularly with metal guitar. This is musicality through chops, pure technical and physical ability. Some examples would include Eddie Van Halen, John Petrucci, Periphery, we already talked about them, Tosin Abasi, Animals as Leaders, Steve Vai, Tommy Emmanuel, someone who, while not a metal musician, someone who has seen Tommy Emmanuel several times, he is a pure technician. He might be the best guitar player in the world. I'm sorry, not sorry. He's mastered the color. He's mastered all the colors, but he's mastered the color black. And we'll talk more about Tommy Emmanuel later. Picking with correct technique, but also scale knowledge, hand-eye coordination, hand-hand coordination, all of that, right? And the names that I've talked about are all-time greats, and they must be regarded as such. Painting with the color black is not only recommended, but required for your growth as a guitarist. If you're one of those guys that rationalizes your way around painting with the color black, newsflash, that's cope. You're coping. And I saw this a lot in, ironically enough, the math rock scene. The math rock slash post rock exchange was this Facebook group that I was a member of for a really long time, and it used to be really cool. And then the Twinkle Tappers, the This Town needs guns, or as I say, these twats need gain because their guitars there's a they sound neutered. They sound like freaking what do they call the Italian singers who had their balls chopped off so they could sing higher? Castrati. They're like castrati guitar tones. So that was black. We're gonna go to white now. So we talked about chops. So I feel it's only fair that we talk about the the yang to the yin. So we're going to talk about feel. And accordingly, we're going to use the color white. So, I talked about David Gilmour earlier. He is the poster child for painting through this color, right? David Gilmour's got some of the best solos of all time, and he didn't really have a lot of chops going on. It was kind of just bendies and feel, but he made it work. And I'm not saying this to say, oh, you don't need chops. I'm just showing you how these specific people, they kind of put all their eggs in one basket, and that became like their sound. And there's things that we as musicians can learn from them, right? I'm not Tom Morello. I'm not Eddie Van Halen. I'm not David Gilmour. I'm not going to be the master of my craft in the way that they are, but I can learn things from all of them, and then I can try to make an all-encompassing, comprehensive style that takes the best from everybody, because that's what we're supposed to do, right? We see this in other fields, athletes, basketball players. They model their handle after Allen Iverson. They model their shooting after Steph Curry. They model their capacity to be a bitch-made loser after LeBron James. Fuck LeBron James. They model their ability to be the greatest of all time after Michael Jordan. They model their mentality after Kobe Bryant, right? So as guitar players, we should do the same thing. It's no different. And that's kind of why I'm championing this objectivity within music narrative in my videos, right? Because I think that we should be able to look at this the same way that athletes look at their craft, right? So feel is the yang to chop's yin, the intangible in relation to the tangible. Feel is something you practice just like anything else. So, for example, your bends, right? Every time you're doing a bend, you feel when you're there. You feel if you're not far enough. You feel if you're too far. So one thing that I used to do for a long time was I would practice my one-step bends and half-step bends and whole-step bends. So half-step being you bend up one fret, right? And whole step would be you bend up 2 frets. Now, I know there's probably people like, actually, Connor, sometimes a whole step is one bend. Because what if you bend from E to F? Or what if you bend from B to C? Shut the fuck up. You know what I mean, right? So 1 fret bends or 2 fret bends, right? Because guitar players, think about it in frets. Think about it in tab, right? The spice must flow. And, that's one thing that I did a lot. That helped me a lot. Working on your vibrato. And another thing that's kind of underrated is finding the pathway on the fretboard that is the most flowing. Because as guitar players, we all know there's more than one spot on the neck to play something, right? That's the way it works. And there might be a way to play it that is easier, and then there might be a way to play it that is harder, but it feels more flowing. I remember my guitar teacher, Brian Turner, he was teaching me the Abbey Road medley. The famous Beatles album, Abbey Road, there's a medley at the end of the album, and the very ending where it's like, and in the end, the love you make is equal, or the love you take is equal to the love you make, blah, blah, blah. And there's that solo, and I was playing it one way that like the tab said, and he was like, well, actually, I've always felt that if you play it this way, it feels more flowing. and it kind of sounds more like what they did on the album. And that really stuck with me. So to this day, I've always tried to engineer the most flowing way to play something. And that can be seen a lot in my guitar solo on the unreleased hit single Slime that Tiger Lopez is going to release. And it's going to be a really sick song. So make sure to come here and check that out. More on that later. So Feel prioritizes quality over quantity and appeals to a wider audience that is incapable of understanding the complexities of a technical solo. You know, we've heard people talk about how a really good solo is something that you sing along to, right? A lot of Jimmy Page's most memorable solos you can sing along to. You know, and I always thought that was interesting how he actually was a really good player and could not be sloppy when he wanted to. It's just he was normally, he just felt like being sloppy, like Stairway to Heaven. I'm trying to think. Rock and roll. He would play kind of sloppy, right? So that's a nice little comparison. I'm trying to think. The Ocean, um, Celebration Day, what is and what should never be, and the list goes on and on. I could keep going. Whole lot of love, right? So feel's really important because feel helps you kind of bring in a wider audience. It kind of gives you more appeal. And without feel, your sound will never be complete. It will at all times sound like something's missing. And sometimes it's just going to sound straight up awful. So the way I like to feel, the way I like to feel about feel, is imagine someone who goes to the gym and they only work out their chest and their biceps, and their posture is affected by this. You take one look at them and you're like, you are skipping stuff. You are not hitting everything. There are things that you are putting too much emphasis on. There are things that you are neglecting, right? It is disproportionate. It is imbalanced. It looks fucking bad. It sounds fucking bad. And I observed this a lot as a young boy, as a young boy playing guitar starting at age 7. By around age 13, 14, that's when everyone decided to pick up guitar, right? So I had already kind of had an advantage over everyone because I had experience and I had knowledge. And one thing that I'm not trying to sound cocky, it's just that was my upbringing. That's what I grew up around. I grew up around rich kids who thought you could buy $1,000 guitar and then they just, sound like shit. And one of the reasons they sounded like shit because they had no feel. All they did was practice metal. So all they really knew how to do was down pick and shred. So the muscular imbalances in their playing were so just like you could hear it. It was in your face, right? It sounded bad. You add a little feel to that. You clean it up a little bit. You throw a little balance in your picking because newsflash, the up pick is just as important, if not more important, than the down pick. Other feel guys that come to mind, Brian May. Shout out Brian May. I feel like Brian May doesn't get enough love. Jimi Hendrix. I'm going to put B.B. King in here. Not enough people give love to B.B. King. John Mayer. Kingfish. I feel like Kingfish is kind of an underrated guy who not enough people know about. Blues guitarist. And he embodies chops as well. He's not just a feel guy. He shreds. And Ty from King's X. Shout out to Ty. Shout out to King's X, man. H-Town. Represent. He represented chops and feel. So the theme, I'm hoping you're noticing at this point, there is a very tight knit relationship between feel and chops. And ideally, you're going to get good at both. There's going to be one that you're better at that you gravitate towards more naturally, and that's okay. I'm a feel guy. I've always been a feel guy. I'm not a chops guy. And that shows in my solos. Like my solo that I have on my page over like Simple Man. I'm a feel guy, I'm a bendy guy, but that doesn't stop me from working on my chops, right? So that's white. So now we've talked about sonic artistry, chops, feel. So now we're going to get into the two remaining fields. And this one was a lot of fun to write, and that's going to be writing, right? Your sense of melody, and that's going to be the color purple, which I thought was fitting because we already have orange, and purple and orange both kind of signify knowledge within alchemical color theory, whatever the fuck it's called. I don't care. And I thought that writing and sonic artistry were two of the most powerful forms of musicality, other than chops and feel. So I thought it was important to give them both powerful colors and then to kind of give chops and feel like a yin yang component. So sense of melody, examples, Jimmy Page, right? That solo, You Shook Me All Night Long. Best Jimmy Page solo all time. I'll never forget the first time my dad played Led Zeppelin 1 for me. We were on a car trip, and right before that solo hit, he was like, best Jimmy Page solo all time. And it blew my mind. It was awesome. His note selection, all of that is perfect because he does things that you might not expect, right? The Beatles are also very good at this, at playing a wrong chord, a wrong note. Kind of like how you have to learn the rules to break the rules, right? Like you have to learn all the rules of writing so then you can go become a writer and break all those rules. It's the same thing with music. You have to learn music theory so you know all the correct notes to play so that you can then write something and put the wrong notes in. And yeah, technically those notes aren't wrong. What I'm talking about is, I guess we would say, incorporating blues or jazz scales into a more classical scale. Because someone like Brian May, like he was very like he would just kind of stick to the major scale and then maybe the minor pentatonic scale that's the relative to that. He would just stay within that box. Some of these other guys, and correct me if I'm wrong, correct me if there's solos he doesn't do that on. I'm just thinking of off the dome here. But, Jimmy Page did not do that. Jimmy Page threw in a lot of extra notes. Like here, I'm actually going to do a thing. This is an example. That's all minor pentatonic, right? If I wanted to maybe make it just the minor scale, I'll throw this note in. Right? You can kind of feel that stays in the key. But what Jimmy Page would do instead is he would use this note. Right? He would do something like that. Someone else that comes to mind doing stuff like this is Robert Fripp, and we'll talk more about him later. But Robert Fripp is just the musical embodiment of the Emperor from Star Wars, in my opinion. Every time I hear him play guitar, I think of the Emperor jumping up in the air and doing that crazy twirly thing with his red lightsaber. And I mean that as a compliment, not an insult. I think the Emperor is actually, as a character, really cool. And while I acknowledge he's the bad guy, he is objectively cool. His whole fighting style is spiteful because he didn't really like lightsaber fighting, but he did it anyway just so he could beat everyone. And the hand lightning is fucking cool. But yeah, love Robert Fripp. And a much more modern example, I think this is like a famous lick, right? Because jazz is really popular now. It's really popular. You're gonna have to excuse me. I haven't played in a while. I'm really self-conscious. Okay, so I'm gonna get better. I'm gonna start practicing more. So I'm doing these videos. No, I'm doing these videos because this is a cool concept that needs to be out in the world. And this is getting long.
That's what she said.
Michael, please. Please.
Writing transcends skill, sound, and everything else. If you can't write, you can't write. Being able to write a good hook, riff, solo, tag, etc. really separates you from the pack. There's a lot of people who are great players. Writing just isn't their thing, you know? So being able to write is special. That is kind of like an it factor thing. Either you got it or you don't. And yeah, you can kind of learn, but you can't teach a sense. You can only sense a sense, right? If you can't write meaningful music, you know, that's just it. You can't write meaningful music if you aren't inspired, so go out and get inspired. The greats always found a way to pay homage to their inspirations, as the great Tracy Morgan would say.
It's called homage. What? Homage.
Shout out that movie with him and Bruce Willis. Shout out to Bruce Willis. You know, these greats would pay homage to their inspirations while making it their own. You know, a really good example of this is Jimmy Page would throw in B.B. King licks in his solos, in his improvisational solos sometimes when playing live. So as an original artist, your writing skills are your strongest color to paint with and should be the backbone of your color palette, right? This is something that can't be recreated. I'm sorry, it can't be replaced, right? Because we're seeing the result of people trying to replace it. That's called coworker music. Because all these corporations, these teams, they can use music theory and proven chord progressions to write a song, and that's how you get Benson Boone. That's how you get Sabrina Carpenter. That's how you get Sleep Token. Sleep Token fucking sucks. Make songs that are meant to be made. Don't make stuff to pay the bills. That's the color purple. And last but least, I would say this is the least. This is the least important skill out of all the skills because this is a finishing touch. Not a garment. A garnish. A garnish. This is a garnish that you add, and that would be the aesthetic, the style, the look, right? And this is going to be the color blue because it's very liquid, because it can change, but it's kind of ethereal, right? I was hinting about that earlier. It's kind of ethereal. It's hard to quantify. The blue can manifest through influence. It can manifest through the other colors. While blue is not essential to raw musicality, it is a difference maker, and it brings everything together. It's going to make you look more put together. It's going to make your music look like a finished product, right? That could be the difference from your album having the vibes of something that you wrote in your basement over 3 weeks versus something that, oh wow, like a real professional band made this. And that could be something as simple as continuity. That could be something as simple as throwing a chorus pedal on. That could be something as simple as every time you track your heavy rhythm guitars, You double them. Look at System of a Down's, right? All those hits sounded really, really good. They doubled all the guitars, and that's what kind of gave it that really ballsy sound. In simple terms, the color blue is vibes, right? And this is definitely a color that that a lot of people have been placing too much emphasis on. I mean, people are talking about it online now about how you have entire areas of music that are just vibes. Thinking about Sabrina Carpenter. I'm thinking about Sleep Token. Sleep Token fucking sucks. I'm thinking about all these artists who it's all sizzle, no steak, right? Thinking about Tate, whatever her name is, the like 21, 22-year old Canadian girl who isn't even, she's a dancer who sings. She's not a singer who dances. Like I haven't seen a clip of her that isn't her shaking her ass, sexualizing herself. Like I've never seen her do a performance where the emphasis isn't just on being a sex kitten, you know? And there's too much of that in the music industry too. It's just, oh, it's sex, you know? Cuz Led Zeppelin, don't get me wrong, Led Zeppelin, they sex was a part of their act. But they had the other five colors. They had sonic artistry. They had chops. Maybe not always with Jimmy Page, but with John Bonham and John Paul Jones. They had white. They had feel, right? They had writing, and they had an aesthetic. When you see the Led Zeppelin font, you know who the fuck that is, right? They had symbols, really sigils. And I'm not for that. I'm not saying go make a magical symbol. It's going to make your music more powerful. I mean, not a magical symbol, a sigil, but you can have like a symbol, like that's cool. Like have like a logo, have continuity, right? That goes into the aesthetic. And so yeah, I guess a good example for blue. I mean, I've kind of already outlined them. I guess you could say Nirvana, Deftones. You know, it's vibes, right? Punk music, punk rock. That's one of the things that punk rock got right. It's not a perfect genre. In a lot of ways, it's an inferior genre to the better ones like metal, rock, but it has its place. It has its place. And so yeah, that is the colors of music. Feel free to comment below if you feel like you can think of a better color wheel for all these things. That's awesome. I'm not gonna try to stop you. If you want to take my idea and expound upon it and maybe have your own way of looking at it, that's really cool. This is just the way that I categorize it within my own inner world because it makes sense to me. It makes sense to me to have orange, black, white, purple, and blue. Orange, sonic artistry. Black, chops. White, feel. Purple, sense of melody. And blue, aesthetic.